Right. Okay, I'll kick things off. So yeah, welcome everyone. I'm Mark Curtis. I'm a waters engineer at WDC. Keith is away down in Wellington, so he's asked me if I'd chair this meeting. Um, I'm sorry, I'm not very good at Te Reo, so I'm not going to be doing a karakia unless there's anybody else particularly would like to kick us off with a karakia. I'll take that as a no. So yeah, well, I'm just hoping that the purpose of the karakia is trying to help have a good meeting. So yeah, that's what our goal is, to have a good meeting. We want everybody to feel comfortable and want everybody to be happy to share info and have your voice and share your opinions. And have a focus on achieving a great outcome for the Raglan community. So is everybody that's here been on this meeting before? I suspect you all are. I think I know everybody apart from Chris and John. Oh no, I think I've certainly heard your name, John. So yeah, good to see you again. I did used to be at Waikato District Council, and so yeah, I do recall having a email correspondence or something with you before. Yeah, so Richard's got a presentation for us. So Sarah, were you going to share the slide pack, or do you want me just to slide it onto the screen?
If you could slide it onto the screen, because mine's not playing ball again today.
So I'm not that familiar with Zoom. So what have we got? Is it a view?
Yeah, just down the bottom it says share.
You want me to do it? I'll figure it out.
Yeah, let's. Okay, thanks, Richard, and I'll hand it over to you at this point.
Happened?
No.
Nothing yet.
No.
Oh, here we go.
Oh, there we go. No, yes.
All good?
Yep.
Cool. All right.
Perfect. Thank you.
What we'll go through today, I'll quickly race through the update of the tasks we've been working away on and for the consenting process, and then Peter will give everybody an update on the plant upgrade. And Peter, feel free to interrupt if I miss a bit on the consenting, because Peter's been involved with some of the consenting stuff. Peter.
Just one thing real quick, guys. I know I've had a lot of people in the community. They sometimes watch these videos and they sometimes don't, but they sometimes feel like, we all know what we're talking about and we're really kind of up to date on it. Is there maybe a chance for one of you at some point, maybe later in the meeting, to do just a quick kind of high level, just real overview of, we've done these things and this is how we got to these points. This is where we are in the consenting process, because
yeah, it's a little bit of an overview, Chris. Yeah.
And they only watch 15 minutes and then they get lost, and then they turn off, and it's hard to get them to engage.
Sure, Chris. So if I provide a little bit of an overview, Richard, because you've been involved in a lot of the detail, it might be easier. So in essence, Raglan wastewater treatment plant is due for an upgrade. It's currently a lot of growth has hit the plant, and it is the current treatment process is inadequate. And at the same time, the discharge consent needs to be renewed. So we've broke the problem up into two because it's been a long journey. There have been attempts to solve a relatively complicated problem in one go. So what we're doing is we're upgrading the plant at the moment, and that's producing that's installing an MBR, a membrane bioreactor, which is the modern breed of wastewater treatment. It's become very run-of-the-mill, and really what's being pushed in engineering now is to deliver them to the regions of value, and they provide a filter barrier to the environment. which is great when you have a lot of contact with water. So the bacteria is filtered out, and there's also UV treatment. It's visually indistinguishable from tap water that permeate. So that's really what's happening at the treatment plant side. In terms of the conveyance options, we've looked at a number of land discharge options. Now, conveyance options are expensive. They often can scale when you're going a large distance more than the treatment plant itself. Often better value to build 2 treatment plants than pump along great distance. So we have looked at very remote options because they were tabled and favoured by the community initially. We have looked at options that go to a golf course but won't accept the water flow. We've basically gone through a long list and we're now down to a short list. And currently what's been discussed today is a short list. It's very well thought through. I think it is something going through this presentation that Richard will take you through. There are 2 solutions that are leading, and they are something that Raglan will be proud of. That will certainly be something that you'll be able to show people at the end of it. You have a great treatment plant and you have a great discharge solution. So you'll be in a place to basically regional leadership. So that's really a little bit of a background, Chris. Bring people up to speed. So Richard, over to you.
Awesome, thank you. And can I just say, it was many of us, me included, on this group, who actually put quite a lot of pressure on you guys and Watercare to decouple the discharge and the treatment, because we didn't want Raglan to wait years and years and years for a modern treatment while we sorted out the land base. So we all could see that the land base, the desired land base, would take a lot longer than the modern treatment plant. So it was a lot of community pressure from these forums that you guys have been hosting that led to the decoupling. It was a ground up thing. Not you were a bit resistant, as I remember, to decouple.
I don't think we were resistant at all.
It's right.
No,
So
Chris
Chris
was quite supportive of us.
Richard, regardless of the origin, Chris, because I'm a new entrant, regardless of the origin, it's a good call, Chris. It's the right call.
And it's community driven.
Yeah.
For anyone watching this on replay, I just wanted to know that.
Yeah. Anyway, I mean,
this drove that decoupling. It wasn't a
so
council.
we'll happily let you have all the credit, Chris. You can have the credit for decoupling.
No, it's the. I want people to watch this video and understand how we got to where we got to.
Yeah.
And it's not about credit. It's about trying to communicate to our community what's going on and how we got to the point to where we are.
Well, it is a credit. It's a credit to the community. Yeah, credit to the community when we are asked. So cool. Over to you, Richard.
Chris, I mean, to give a debrief is quite a long one, because this journey, as you're aware, has taken 4+ years. And like Peter says, we've looked at many land disposal subsurface stripper options. Mangatawhiri was the last one, but the costs started looking too much, so we re-looked at SDI, subsurface strippers, in the last 6 months at Wainui Reserve, and we sort of covered that off at the last meeting that wasn't that successful. And so now we're looking at a long land contact, as we discussed at the last meeting, and these were the 3 locations we looked at. One was this gully down here. You can see the screen, can't you guys? Just confirming that. Yep.
Yeah. Can we get it any larger though? Sorry. It's a little bit hard.
We've got.
I can see it pretty well. I think anybody who knows the area will understand where we're at. Yeah.
Cool. Okay. All good.
We looked at this option in here, this gully here. Then we looked at the second gully, which drains out to the marine area. The second option drains out to the Wainui stream area. Then we looked at a third option, as we mentioned at our last meeting, which would drain out through this pond and out, either pumped through the existing discharge or out to the Wainui stream. These are some of the artist impressions of what we were looking at on the option 1 area. The coastal gully here. We were looking at some predator-free fencing potentially around this area and planting it up, and working in with some of the things which parks have got in their reserve management plan, as far as horse tracks, mountain bike and walking tracks. That's sort of what we're looking at. It's not a wetland as you were talking about prior to the meeting when we got on, Chris. It's a land contact, and it comes in up here, and it would flow around this channel and be dispersed amongst that sort of natural gully that runs down through the out the dunes and sand in that sea area. The second one we had was that other gully, which drains down to Wainui Stream, and we looked at a similar thing of revegetating and discharging up the top here and meandering around and then slowly dissipating it through the natural gully there. That was sort of what that would look like at the top end. The third one we looked at was within the plant. We've got an old pond in here, and we looked at discharging through there, meandering out, and either gravitating down there or coming around and being collected with a pump station and out through the existing discharge. That's sort of what it would look like. So we got these artist impressions. So that was the idea: plant it up, naturalise the whole zones for all three options. Since the last meeting, we've had preliminary discussions with Tiny Hapu out there, representative, and the three options. On the three options, they ruled out option 3, which was the one down by the plant, within the plant, discharging directly to the Wainui Reserve. That was unacceptable to them. And the initial feedback they've given us is that this gully up the top, which drains out, that was option 1, which drains out to the marine area, was the one. We've had some initial dialogue with Waikato District Council's reserve staff. They've raised some issues, and we'll meet. We've got a meeting set down from later this month to go through the points raised. Any of the options will need, which look on Wainui Reserve, will need assessments around archaeological heritage, reserve management plans, iwi, and other stakeholders would have to be involved, ecological impacts, the public access issues around the park would have to be addressed, and the maintenance and funding, ongoing maintenance and funding of that area would have to be sorted out, talked about and understood before any option could progress. So that is pretty much where we've got to. Sorry, I won't get
Yes,
Peter's one up yet.
Yeah, if you could return to the first slide, Richard.
First slide, yeah.
Just
So-
have a little bit more view.
That's sort of where we're at the moment, and that's how we're progressing. We're looking at these, they're not wetlands, they're land contact, and they'll drain down through the natural gullies with quite a bit of planting and bush rehabilitation. So before we go on to Peter's, is there a discussion or any questions sort of around that one?
If it's all right, Richard, I'd probably just talk to some of them about what they deliver. So
Cool.
option 3, Chris, you in the last meeting, was Chris and Mike were very keen to look at something local to the plant. That's what option 3 is. Now option 3 takes the permeate, passes it through rock and a wetland, then would discharge to the local stream. Now there's a clear objection straight away from iwi, and that's certainly one party. The other parties object as well. That's likely to have a substantial headwind with that approach. Now you can then pump into the existing main through the existing discharge, which is the red line heading north. But because you will be short of capacity, that will then need to be duplicated in the future. So it's likely that option 3, whilst initially looks like a good idea, it could well be the most expensive of the 3. Leaving you really to discuss options 2 and 1.
Explain the
Yeah.
was there, you say there's not enough capacity, so the water's coming out of the MBR, and if you're not discharging to the stream, because that is obviously a non-starter, but if you're discharging after the land contact to the existing discharge, is it that it takes a certain amount of time for the water to travel across that land, or what's it? Because if you were
the
to
pipe,
discharge
the pipe itself to the diffuser, it has limits. The pipe, you can only push about 2 meters, just beyond 2.5 meters a second in the pipeline, and it won't take long before Raglan grows enough that you will exceed that.
Okay, so regardless of treatment or anything else, the existing pipe to the existing discharge is a
Limits,
constraint.
as a
Here's
constraint.
limits, and like Peter said, in the future would probably need upgrading.
But with the other options, it could be there as a backup, and say
It
option
will be
one.
Always be
retained.
there as a backup.
It always will be retained as a backup. It's really what options 2 and 3 is. They offer you more capacity by being another point, and it's like it'll be the primary point of discharge. So if I move then to option 2 in reverse, and then to 1, permeate's often referred to as new water. It's water that's come from the wastewater treatment process. It's been extensively processed, filtered, UV'd. It's often referred to as new water. The new water is in option 2 is going into a local stream. There's been a lot of DNA testing. There's a lot of natural fish spawning in the freshwater stream. So you'll be mixing what is new water with people often refer to as ancient water or natural water. So it has, whereas option 1, there's not really much happening in that gully. It is ocean facing. Is it expected that wildlife will return to the area, which is always very reassuring with water. Once you see the wildlife return to an area, it'll be very much its own separate stream. So the new water will be its own stream, will make its way subterraneously and back to the ocean. And that's really, so option 1 is cost-wise very similar, option 1 and 2, but you are having an outcome that keeps water separation and allows you to regenerate an area and get some comfort that things have been done well. You get to see the water, and you get to see the with the planting, the wildlife come back. So that's it. It's a showcase. So there's 3 options here. We've explored quite a number of options in terms of conveyance. I haven't been part of the whole journey. I think certainly Chris and Mike have, and along with a few others, Angeline. And it's been a long journey, but these 3 options are as local as we've been able to achieve, and the conveyance costs are notable, so we are looking for local solutions. So this is the first cut, and the dialogue initially has been small, and you are the second group of people to review this. So, shock, awe, and excitement. Yeah.
So I guess the question is, what's the risks? Where's this, like, from science point of view? What's the known risks, I guess, before we get into the unknown?
There's 2. There's the known risks, which is the treatment process may struggle because we get a lot of seawater into the wastewater network. Then nitrogen would get high. That would mean the planted area would grow a bit better. And that's really, it's not what we want because we have nitrogen targets. So, but it's a relatively benign outcome. If we had a suspended solids breach, which is a breach of a membrane, then it's a pretty benign outcome. Your unknown risks are the risks that come from the public and waste disposal, which is emergent contaminants. So pharmaceuticals, pesticides, PFAs, things that don't break down.
What would they do?
Well, they pass, like all water bodies, that's why there's a PFA issue. They pass through the water system continuously. And you'd be able to read on the internet or find out far more about PFAS than what I could tell you here.
But would that really end up in the ocean?
Most of the issue in the world it comes from manufacturing. So as far as I'm aware, very little source in New Zealand. So the PFAS that you would accumulate in your body probably come from any Teflon products that you would have used. But if you use Teflon products, that will pass through.
You said,
NBR does
you said before
retain
the
some though,
water-
Peter?
All right, yeah. So a lot of the sludge picks up a lot of the pollutants, but the unknown risk that Chris is referring to. There are unknown risks, but there's a lot of people thinking about that. But it is the things that are difficult to break down.
Yeah, maybe we can just learn about that as a community and use less of them. Have some education. I don't know exactly, I have to handle it myself, but
you mentioned earlier the water itself will travel subterraneously, so under the sand. Once it travels along option 1, say, through the man-made gully and all the natural planting, the new planting, the new water then goes into the sand layer. So how do we, as a kind of community board specifically, reassure or understand that we're not going to end up with, say, a part of the beach that in 20 years becomes contaminated, for want of a better word? I know obviously the way water works and it will go out to sea through the sand, but how do we reassure our community that this is safe?
That is part of what we've still got to do. Too. Is once this becomes an option, we will have to look at the ecological effects. So, Peter.
Pretty much, yeah. So, well, obviously, it's a very high treatment standard, very modern treatment standard. The unknowns that Chris is referring to are more of an international issue than they are going to be in Raglan. The Raglan community is very good with waste disposal and recycling, and they care about the environment. So your risks here are very low. In terms of this emergent risk, they aren't going to contaminate an area like sand. It won't. It's not. It's a non-issue. This is we're hitting a target here that's suitable to discharge to water body, like the Waikato River.
Yeah.
But yeah,
I'll just add, the only current wastewater treatment plant that does regular emerging contaminants monitoring is Hamilton City, Puketi, and they do they got a consent for 124,000 cubes a day, far larger than Raglan's. And they've just had their 5-yearly report on it, and it was surprisingly low. I was quite impressed how low the emerging contaminants were for an output that size. So it's not all that bad for a plant that big. So if you scale that down to Raglan size of maybe 3,000 cubes a day, the risk is reduced somewhat.
And
still there,
yeah, you're correct. And Chris, obviously Aucklanders drink that water. So is all we're asking you is to walk on the sand over it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No, I think it's great. I'm impressed.
I mean, there's a lot in life to be concerned about. There's a lot that we can do better. This is a high quality plant. It is, and we've done a big push to make it affordable. So we're pretty proud of the outcome. And there isn't, in terms of providing a barrier to the environment, there isn't anything better. This is it. So the next step is what they do in Singapore, which is called RO, and then they make a beer out of it. So you can go to Singapore and drink RO beer. Yeah.
If only we did this to our stormwater, right? Because that's the real pollution.
Yeah, you're probably right there, Chris. The problem is more of stormwater. The runoff from stormwater would be
and also planting around the harbour. So there's a lot of erosion around the harbour.
Yeah, true.
So I arrived a little bit late into the meeting, but does it kind of have approval from Tainui? Or Tainui?
Tainui, we've had a meeting with them, plus taken them onto site, and they're this is the option they want, is option one. Yeah, that's the direction at this stage. But obviously their representative still has to go back and talk to their people. But we've been given the green light to push ahead with this one from them.
Great. Yeah, that's pretty cool.
Yes, a consultation will expand out. So you have team 2 and we're expanding out from here.
Yeah, that's, I guess, the next big challenge is, and a lot of people are quite keen maybe for you guys to host a community update, maybe something in person in the community, and also some kind of pamphlet or flyer that we can, because obviously people know that plant upgrades happening, and there's a couple of people in the community that like to stir up a bit of whatever. So communication and consultation is definitely high on, especially winter's a good time. People are here and they've got time and it gets done early, and so yeah, now's the time to really engage with the community.
Yeah, good call. So I think that's really a cool step, I guess. So Richard, yourself and Garrett will be leading that. So, yeah. So I think this is our first presentation to yourselves of these options, and we're sort of widening the circle and speeding the campaign up. So yeah, all those aspects of community engagement we picked up.
Not only there's a bit of engagement, Peter, we're getting the costs redone on this option too. Yeah. But that will take a little while because the shape and form of that green area on option 1 will need quite a bit of input from the reserves department. They've got rules they have to work with their reserve management plan and ensuring public accessibility to the park and things like that.
There's a big aspiration in the community to maybe move away from some of the farming practices on that reserve and look at how to open up to the community a bit more. So I think closing one area off for wastewater to trickle down a created gully is nothing if we can actually open up some of the farmland to regular community activities.
And the intent really is to be a regenerated area with fresh water available. You will find that the bird life will want to come back. It'd be a shame to put all this effort in and it's just possums and stuff that move back. So you do all this planting, you're going to want something out of it. Yeah. Without a fence, it won't.
Yeah.
What sort of size is the area that you would be considering planting, and like how much space would this take up?
Gesture with your mouse. There you go.
The green area is what we're looking at planting, but this is really I've got to stress this is their first cut, and both iwi and other stakeholders will want to have their say. So this is really first cut, but we were looking at that whole gully basically being planted up. Yeah.
You can see the grey line there, Gabrielle. The grey line is the shape that's planted. Some of it's not got planting shown because it's already planted.
Yeah.
But the grey line is the area getting regenerated.
The community has already had a project up there where they've been doing there's rat traps all over the place, and it's all fenced off with an electric fence, so the public isn't really encouraged to access it currently. So this would just enhance some of the work that's already been done there.
But and among Tauwhi, they have in Tauwhanui they have controlled gates. You can get in and out as a pedestrian. So.
I'm guessing it's too early days to understand the capacity yet of this gully option one, or how it could, if there's room to grow, I don't know, into other areas, and that steep area of pampas next to it, or any other, I don't know, or is this just basically we've got to get something up for the next 15-20 years and then we'll deal with capacity once we've got one working? And I don't know.
In terms of this covers it. This is the
covers it, yeah.
Because it's like 2070 or something.
Okay. Cool.
Like, because it's a free flowing arrangement. It's not trying to. You get to see the water at the beginning, and then eventually it makes its way subterranean at its own course. It's not trying to go through a dripper system. It's a far more natural arrangement.
I like it a lot. It's a lot more, yeah. It's much more in line with the Raglan kind of values and ways of doing things as well.
The intent is to have something to be proud of.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, do we want to move on to Pete's plant upgrade now, or is there any more discussion people want to?
Did somebody see the comment that John mentioned?
No, I can't see that. Sorry, it's the way I'm seeing.
Yeah, it says, can you read it, Mark?
I can't now. Where's it gone?
Okay.
It
right.
was to do with what different people thought about. And whereabouts is it? We must be able to find
Yeah,
this.
I've
Okay.
got it. So, John, what
See
do the
it on the
groups
screen
involved
now.
in the planting and trapping have to say about the concept? And that's from John Lawson. So, John, you're group number 2. We need to meet with these groups to find out what they think. So
It
we've
looks
also
like
got a
the same comment. Yeah.
Yes, we've also
I
got
see
another comment.
Angeline's put a comment
Angeline,
in
so,
there too.
yeah. So it's great to
Hi,
have
everyone.
support.
This issue's been to the marae. I've reported at Poihakana, and we support the option. So yeah, it's the best after 50 years. It's the best that we've seen so far. Keeps away from the waterways, and we think the land can take it.
Bye.
Yeah.
So John's talked about the erosion concern. That's something we're looking at. We need to buttress. There are existing slips, but that sort of goes back to Chris's comment. The way the land's currently being used, it's used in sort of traditional farming, and there will be the replanting itself combined with some buttressing of the slopes. We're expecting it to be more stable in the future. So. I think that there's plenty of time for people to collate their thoughts. So we'll move on to the project, shall we?
Yep.
Yeah, so this is an MBR, which is referred to as a membrane bioreactor plant. It's got the current plant receives about 2 megalitres a day, and this plant, once it's had its full cassette fit out, will do 5.5 megalitres a day on a very small footprint. The existing plant takes a large footprint. This plant has been built inside the plant, taking quite a small footprint. Watercare have built a number of MBR plants, and so within the Waikato district, this is our third. And they provide, as previously mentioned, high quality output, which is visually indistinguishable from water. Tap water. When you take a sample on site, you have to label it, so there's no mistakes. In essence, the 3 parts that are being built is a bioreactor and a screenings area and a building. The first part you can see under construction there is the bioreactor. It's a concrete structure. It's the biggest structure of the 3 and takes the longest to build. We're about 40% the way through. The base slab's been poured, all the reinforcements been formed, and the concrete pours are starting from the side closest to us in that photo and making its way to the end. That's so that we can backfill against the wall and then start building the screenings area. So this tomorrow we do our final pours on the first 2 cells, meaning the first 2 cells get closed up and we can fill them up with water, and we can do our water test. Once we've done those, we can then start backfilling and start building the screenings area. And the screenings area is what Richard's gesturing to. It's basically the ones with the cylindrical tanks in front of it. So you can see the tanks there. Wastewater will be screened initially with coarse screens, fine screens, and then it goes into the bioreactor. The bioreactor is an area where it's alternated between being anoxic and aerobic. And that helps, that basically removes the nitrogen and the BOD of the water. The back end of the plant is the filter. There's a membrane filter that filters out all the bacteria, and then it goes off for UV treatment. So that's really it. The building itself holds blowers and electrical equipment to drive the pumps. So we're 40% through the build of the tank. Once we start backfilling, we'll be able to start building the screenings area. And we're certainly, we're ahead of program, so we're quite pleased with ourselves at the moment. And at the moment, everything's going well. So, yeah, like it's I mean, they're always exciting. As an engineer, I find the most exciting part is turning it on and seeing the permeate come out. It's always the magic bit. You know, you see something come in pretty dirty, and it comes out very clear. And yeah, I'm looking forward to seeing that part happen. But it's going to be next, early next year. Within wastewater treatment, there's 3 areas, and this is liquid stream, and then there's solid stream and airstream treatment. So you need to do them in stages, and this is the first stage of, this is an advanced liquid stream treatment plant upgrade. Cool.
And what solids does this plant produce, and how are they dealt with?
At the moment, the solids are, at the moment today, the solids accumulate in the ponds, and then we do desludging on a routine. And the desludging creates a sort of like a pile of topsoil, and it's trucked away to landfill. That practice will carry on. So the sludge will end up in the ponds, we will desludge, and it will go to landfill. There are plans to modernise that, but it has to be done catchment wide. And you can't start that plan until you have a liquid stream upgrade. You have to do this step first. There's no urgency to do that for easy 10 years.
And what you envisage, Peter, is a centralised location in the district where we'd do that management. We'd truck
initially,
it to,
yeah. I think there's other sites that would be a place to kick it off. And how small and intensive we can make it. Raglan's quite remote, so it might be a place long term. We end up with some local processing. But most sites will end up with central facility. We have these just early days, so I think there will be some solid steam treatment centralised in the Waikato district. So those that are interested, there's a lot of people that make biogas with it. That was very traditional back in the 80s, 90s, and early 2000s. Most people are now producing biochar.
And what's the capacity long term of this plant in terms of growth and households and numbers and stuff like? Where will this drive us to?
We spend a lot of time thinking about how we can upgrade it in the future, because we don't want to make our lives hard for us in the future. This particular plant is currently receiving about 2 megalitres a day, just over 2 megalitres a day. This plant, without just you add cassettes as you order them as required, will take us all the way up. It'll look the same as in this picture, all the way up to 5.5 megalitres a day. So to go from just over 2, so a doubling. There is room. You can see we've left room behind this. There's a little indentation on that photo. And if you go to the earlier slide there, Richard, with the crane on it, you can see where the crane's sitting. There's capacity there for another whole lane. So you can go to 11 megalitres a day if you were to just to copy the existing arrangement. And that's without taking over any of the pond areas. So you just upgrade them by adding lanes.
And then further down the track, for any dewatering facility, that's you start filling in ponds and using that area, or what happens there?
So within the first phase of expansion there, Mark, where the crane is, you'd have another reactor, so that would take you up to 11. Just in front of the crane, you wouldn't need a blower building now, so the dewatering building's provisioned to go there. So there's room on that island still as well for dewatering. And we were anticipating, following dewatering, there'd be a central biosolids processing facility, so it will be trucked.
Mm-hmm.
And you're not talking many trucks away. In winter in Raglan, you're looking, very few, maybe 1 or 2 a week with lime stabilized facility.
In terms of incoming flows, so some of those ponds will be available to hold capacity in a like super extreme, mega weather event that may or may not come in the foreseeable future.
The intent is to keep the ponds functioning. So they're a great asset. You're sort of touching on something. I'm surprised at the interest because it's great. Often someone will just come and upgrade and install a modern plant, but modern plants tend to like a steady flow. Then if you get a Hurricane Katrina or a supply chain problem, or massive salt ingress, you need a way to back up. Now, the existing system is a very resilient system. It doesn't provide amazing treatment quality, but it does provide a basic level of treatment quality. And the best synergy really is to keep the old plant and you just keep the foliage alive with a small flow, and you return back to the treatment so everybody is getting a high quality output, but you can keep the existing plant alive and you retain it for storm events. So if there's a massive, way beyond people's design thinking, you can spill to the ponds, let them level rise, and then at the end of the large storm, return flows, so at least all flows are filtered. That's one of the benefits of option 1 as a discharge, because it does mean in a big shock environment, if we start losing nitrogen control, we can still filter out all the bacteria and send the flow through the option 1 route. The option 2 route makes contact with a stream, and you wouldn't want nitrogen there, so we would then be forced to use the old discharge in an event like that. So option 1 is far more resilient and will get more use. Option 2 is less resilient, and we would have to resort to using the existing discharge, which is not favoured. So we very much will keep the old system running, and it's really about surety so that we can respond to shocks, storms, and failures in the network. So I like oxidation ponds. They're lower energy. They are a great asset, but they just got to be used the right way and worked in with the new structure the right way. They'll clean up massively too, so you'll see them at the moment. They're quite green and discoloured, so they'll get quite clear.
The Lakes District.
Yeah, so you can eat the ducks. Yeah. Cool. So, I mean, it's fun. It's a great job, and and Raglan's a pretty place. I enjoy going there.
Great to see the progress. I obviously haven't driven in to see this and see what's happening, so it's good to see what's actually happening from this angle.
It looks better from the drone photo. It's nice. Yeah.
Yeah.
It doesn't look that nice until you get sort of towards the end, because they are just muddy construction sites. So towards the end, when the tarmac's down and everything's pretty safe, we would generally start extending invites out.
I would love to know if, Angeline, you had any more comments or feedback from your people. Just great to see you on the call, and I would love to know if there's anything that's popped up on your side.
I think our people are just happy to think that we'll be getting rid of that discharge or not using it as much as is currently the case. Hopefully we won't get these big events and these ponds can hold stuff during those events, but our preference is land-based, always has been. And we actually believe that we are supporting number 1 option. The other 2 just do not suit us because they go through our waterways. And we do certainly, I mean, the Wainui stream is pretty pristine at the moment. There's a lot of life in it, so you wouldn't want to put flow down towards there. And down by the marae has never been a site that we have favoured. We don't really like the fact it's in our Waihitapu site. However, this plant, I'm impressed with the size of it, the fact that it's up higher. So in the case of sea level rise, it is up higher, so treatment can continue. I think the biggest issue for Raglan is there needs to be some holding tanks around those pump stations which actually do not operate when there's no power. I think that's one of the biggest issues of trying to bring stuff across town to this facility that needs to be looked at some time in the future. Yeah, so it's a big picture. And the other thing is, as Raglan grows, we would hope that people would start looking at more local sites so that they're not bringing it right across town. You know, if Raglan East is going to develop with a lot more subdivisions out past Torquay or wherever, then they need to actually set up their own structures rather than looking at pipelines going everywhere. Yeah, but that's just
Absolutely
not even
agree.
looking at this model. It's just sort of thinking about the other things that go along with all of this.
But it's all connected.
Does that answer your question, Chris?
Yeah, and in general, option one with the backup of the existing, you're able
basically
to stomach the backup of the existing is my kind of underlying question is because obviously the existing has a lot of controversy and history, but if we are to get a good option such as option one, you guys can stomach having the existing there as a backup?
Well, we're hoping that it won't be used. We're hoping that somehow we're not going to use it that often, but at least this way, the majority, I think, would go out through the reserve. And in those instances where there are storms, we can prepare ourselves, like putting a rahui so people don't go and get food and stuff, you know, trying to live with this type of thing. Our preference is nothing in the ocean. You know, it's never been our option. But we're realistic. There's no way you're going to get rid of this infrastructure. Council's invested too much in it. The Raglan ratepayers have. So we have to live with, you know, what we have at the moment. But I think what we're looking at is certainly a huge improvement on what we've had in the past.
Agreed.
Any more questions or comments from anybody?
I think just, you know, coming into the call a bit late and just being involved, but not so much recently, but, you know, on and off when I was on the community board, it's pretty exciting to see that there's potentially an option that, like, I'm like, wow, that's, you know, it's been so much work, obviously so much work for many, many years locally, but through council and water care. I'm sorry if I'm not even up to the play. I know that it's an exchange, but yeah, just acknowledging the huge amount of work, really, and in a sense that there's a possibility. It's like, it's pretty amazing.
Mm-hmm.
You know, I'm just, yeah.
Totally agree. About 5 years ago, I was working as a treatment plants team leader, and the aquamats up there, you know, they were doing some work, and the discharge was, you know, a lot better than just a simple old oxidation pond, but going to this next level of treatment, it's just like night and day, you know. As Peter was talking about that quality of that water, you know, it's just looks pristine when you look at it. Bacteria taken out essentially. Yeah, it's just it's a fantastic place to get to, and there's been a lot of work going on there, and yeah, water care got to take a lot of credit for that, and also the people in the community backing it. So yeah, congratulations to everybody.
The big question is, can we get this delivered while water care is still with us, shall I say?
We'll be working early next year, Chris.
Cool.
Yeah.
Have you shown Stephen Howard?
Yeah, well, we've had initial site meetings with Stephen. We will always make sure he can be our mascot. Yeah.
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 Oh, if there are no other questions, thanks everybody for coming along. And I think the next meeting's in a couple of months. Am I correct in that assumption?
Yes, in 2 months' time.
Right.
It would be great if we can plan and start to think about a community engagement strategy consultation and how we want to do that, and maybe we can take this offline from one of our meetings and have it as an email chain. But that would be a really good conversation that we could actually start now, between now and the next meeting, and we'll look at dates and venues and all that.
Exactly. That is the next step. Cool. Thank you.
All right, are we signing out, people?
Thanks, Chris, for leading.
Yeah, thanks for all the interest, and it's nice to have everybody turn up and yeah, have your input. It's really good to have people's input.
Cool. Thank you
Thank
all
you.
for attending.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank
Thanks,
you.
guys.
Thank you.
Thanks very much. Have a good evening.
Bye.
Yeah, bye-bye.
Bye.